All right, looks like our attendees list is leveling out. So thank you everybody for joining today. We're going to go ahead and get started. Today's webinar is going over our estimating and bid solicitation process in RedTeam Flex, which is actually one of my very favorite topics to go over. So I'm glad you could join us today. We're going to be hopping back and forth a bit between the slides that you'll see here and a live database so that I can show demonstrations. So that's why you're seeing a little bit of my browser window here. Just want to make sure we can pop back and forth. What we're going to go over today, we're going to go over how to effectively set up your estimate and your bid solicitation process in RedTeam Flex. We're going to learn what bid packages are and understand their value in terms of managing bids for our subcontractors and suppliers. We're going to learn how to effectively create and manage those bid packages. And then we'll gain best practices on how to convert those into subcontracts and purchase orders, including how we're going to create commitments, managing that work downstream. So some nice shortcuts for you that you may not have seen before. Who am I? I'm Sarah. I've been working with Red Team for close to 5 years now, about 4.5 years. And you may know me from implementation. I've been in the implementation team most of that time, kind of shifting over to an enablement role this year where I'm helping create great content like this and our learning management system, things like that to make sure that our clients have all the best resources and content to make sure you guys are experts in using your Red Team Flex software. I always like to have this slide in here at the beginning of my webinars just to make sure that you're not in the wrong room. We do have several different products here at Red Team. So today we're doing a webinar on Red Team Flex, which is our kind of flagship platform, our end-to-end construction management software that's certainly a little more configurable than our Red Team Go platform. So if you are a user of Red Team Go, today's webinar is unfortunately not for you. We want to make sure that you guys get signed up for our next webinar. Usually we alternate, so the next one should be Red Team Go. But if you're here for Red Team Flex, you're in the right place. And let's go ahead and get started. I guess before I do jump in, I do want to mention, guys, there is a Q&A feature. Feel free to go ahead and drop any questions you have throughout the webinar in the Q&A. We've got Jessica here, who's one of our implementation managers. She's going to be helping to answer questions in that Q&A in the background, and she'll kind of feed any of those to me that I can answer live for you. So we're going to get started by talking about estimating. Building an estimate in Red Team Flex, I will call it our new estimating feature. It's really about 1.5 years old by now, is really a great flexible point and click system. We hope that you're building it from scratch in Red Team Flex. We've certainly tried to make it really quick and easy for you to do so, but we'll also show you that there is an import feature today that you can use. So you can add all of your cost codes and track those by phase. We'll show you where your phases are. We can build out detailed assemblies under each cost code. That would be the components or line items under a given cost code. And allow those to be tracked as what we call master assemblies, which can speed up your estimating in the future. So if I build an assembly for masonry in my first project, I can say I want to be able to reuse this breakdown of masonry on future projects. That's what we would call a master assembly. So we'll show you how to build those. We'll look at indirect cost allocation rates and how you can set those up to handle overhead costs or any other kind of indirect costs you want to pass along to your customer. We'll look at supplemental markups, which are things like technology fees or anything else that's a percentage-based markup that, again, you need to pass on that cost to your customer. And then we'll look at proposal type and fee calculation to make sure that you're aware of the ability to choose whether you're using a fixed price, a construction management, or a time and materials style project, and how to get your fee in there exactly the way that you want it. So again, we'll pass out these slides after the webinar, but this is really just kind of an outline guide for you. We're going to do a live demo today, so I'm actually going to jump over into a project. I am in a project that's in the request stage. So I've opened up my estimate, either from the home icon or using the project setup form. And we're here in step 4, our cost estimate. Now, when I first arrive here, it's going to be completely empty. You can see I've already done a little bit of estimate building here. But when I first arrive, it's going to be totally empty. And I can come here to the new icon to start adding cost codes and building out my estimate. Like I said, we do hope that you're building it out from scratch. We're certainly going to show you that method today. We do have the ability, however, to import from a spreadsheet. Let's say you're using a different estimating software that you really prefer for whatever reason, you can bring that in. It's an Excel template, can come in here and download. I actually advise that if you know you're using a different tool for estimating, keep a blank copy of this estimate template on your desktop or on your server somewhere so that your estimators can translate, right? If you're using any other estimating tool, you can copy paste that data right into our template, drag it and drop it here, and it's going to import. That's going to work for all those direct costs here under the cost code system. I do want you to also notice you can import from a project. This is a new feature. I call it new. It's actually a returning feature that we had with our old estimate feature, and we've brought it back here in the last few weeks. You can now import from one Red Team project to another very quickly and easily. All you have to do is open this drop down and you can start searching the name or number of the project. So I can go look for any of my projects here. You're going to see as I start typing in a name or number, that item will pop to the top. So it makes it easy for you to find as you have lots and lots of projects, and you can go ahead and bring over that entire estimate from that project. One of the great implications of this is if you are a client who routinely performs 2 or 3 different types of projects, then you like to start with a pretty canned estimate template for certain types of projects, I would definitely encourage you to build a sample project for multifamily or for renovation projects or whatever it is that you say, hey, I want a template for this. Build a sample project, name it appropriately, and build that estimate template inside that sample project. Now, every time you start a new renovation project, you can import from that sample project and you effectively have estimate templates on hand here in RedTeam Flex. I think that's a really good new development to be aware of. In terms of building from scratch, which we're going to do here, I simply choose add cost codes, and then I can search through my entire cost codes list to find what I need. So we can go ahead and put in plumbing and search, and we're going to find all our different plumbing cost codes. Now I'm going to pick this plumbing residential because I know that's a master assembly. You'll notice I've got this same cost code plumbing in here several times. You're going to start out with one version, if you will, or one master assembly for each of your cost codes. And then you can build them out, build additional master assemblies as you see fit. Think of those as mini estimate templates for a single cost code. I'll show you what I mean. So I can add any cost codes I want here. I don't have to add them one at a time. I can checkbox as many as I want and add them all in groups. We can open up this assembly, right? The assembly is the breakdown of costs underneath a given cost code. And you can see here, I've saved plumbing residential as a master assembly, meaning this is how I like to break down my plumbing cost code on all my residential projects. Now I have it in here. It actually, we haven't fleshed that out. You can see I've got unit costs, but I haven't fleshed out my quantities. I can actually come in and flesh out those quantities if I want to ensure that this drops in ready to go on each new project. Again, it's not a full estimate template, but think of it like gluing a few of the puzzle pieces together ahead of time. Now, this is helping me build faster, more standardized estimates. For items that I don't have a master assembly, right? I brought in rough carpentry all by itself. It's going to start with just a single line item in the assembly. And if I want to flesh this out in more detail, I can add with the little plus symbol here, multiple line items. And I can have lumber in here. I can have installation costs. I can have delivery costs if I want, whatever the case may be, right? Get as detailed as you want. Put the titles in. Notice you do have a narrative section here. If you hit these 3 little dots, you can get as detailed as you want. So scope of work for this assembly line item, right, is what I'm putting in here. Right, and I can describe the type of lumber. I can, if I'm talking about installation, I can give the entire scope of work for installation, what is entailed in that item. We also have a couple decisions we can make down below the narrative. Show on proposal is allowing me to say, I would like this narrative and this assembly item to be visible in the scope of work on my proposal down in step 7. If you check that box, it will automatically show in the scope of work on the proposal. You can, of course, make edits on the fly once you get to step 7. Variable item quantity here is asking, essentially, do you want to be able to handle this cost code on a unit basis? So the example here, if I say, yes, this is a variable item quantity, we can say that I'm building this out. We need, 45 lineal feet, right? Whatever the case may be, at a cost of $7,500 per linear foot. Hopefully not that high, but right, we can put in our unit of measure and our quantity here. If we say this is the amount that I need for a single unit, then later down the road, if this is a variable item quantity, we can say, you know what? I'm building 6 apartment units. Let's up this to 6. And now 45 times 6 gives you 270 at a cost of $7,500 a piece. There's your total, $2 million for lumber, right? That's what variable item quantity does for you. On the other hand, you might say delivery is a one-time charge. So I could come in here and say, no, delivery is not. Delivery to site at beginning of project. Right? We can go ahead and put in our details there. And this one would not be a variable item quantity. So now if I put that in as a one lump sum at a cost of $6,500, as I adjust this quantity, the lumber and the installation adjust, but the delivery fee does not. So that's what variable item quantity does for you. It allows you to handle the entire cost code on a unit basis and maybe make exceptions for one-time only fees or charges, costs, if you will. Okay, so we built out our breakdown for rough carpentry. We can now make the decision, would we ever use this same breakdown of rough carpentry again in the future? This is something to be thinking about, especially as you're building your first few estimates in RedTeam Flex, is what am I going to reuse? Save yourself effort down the road. If I would use this same breakdown again on certain projects, I can come to the cost code and save as a master assembly. I encourage you to give it a unique title before you do that. Because if I save this as rough carpentry, you're going to see, like you did with plumbing, when I come up here to add cost codes and I look for plumbing, in this database, someone has saved about 4 different versions, 4 different master assemblies for plumbing. But the titles are all the same, so I don't know how to choose the one that I want. I definitely advocate, if you're using master assemblies, go ahead and change this title so that you understand when you would use it again. We can say multifamily. That's how I like to break down rough carpentry on my multifamily projects. I've seen examples like general conditions with trailer, general conditions without trailer. You can title it in whatever way makes sense to you. Just give yourself an idea of when you would want to use that particular assembly again. And then we go ahead and save as a master assembly. It's been saved, just confirming for you, great. And now, on future projects, when we go look for rough carpentry, we're going to have that down here, multifamily. There it is. Right? We've got that option and we can grab it. Rough carpentry with labor, rough carpentry residential. Now I have detailed titles that allow me to choose the right one for the right project. Notice if you click on the cost code, you can also delete it. So if you add something and decide you want to remove it, you can certainly do that. Everything in here that's blue is point and click. So we've tried to make this as simple and easy as possible. We want it to feel a little bit like that favorite Excel spreadsheet that your estimator may be attached to, right? You can come in and edit unit costs and quantities and units of measure. These units of measure can be customized by your administrators in the configuration menu. And then I also want to mention the category here. This is something that's easy for people to miss. Generally speaking, the 5 categories you're going to be using are often labor, materials, subcontract, equipment, and other. Those are the 5 basic cost categories we start you with. But up in your project preferences, the same way you can create project phases, you can also create and track project cost categories. So if I come here for cost categories, you've got your 5 basic cost type: labor, materials, subcontract, equipment, and other. But you can add as many categories as you'd like with different names. Now, these names don't always make a whole lot of sense because this is our training database. We do a lot of silly things in here. But if we come in and add a cost category, it's as simple as saying, pick from one of your existing cost categories. Those are created in the configuration menu by your administrators, and give it a name for this project and add it in, right? How do I want to track my costs on this project? Most often, our clients are simply tracking 5 options here: labor, material, subcontract, equipment, and other. And if that's the case, great. You have your nice, simple, cut and dried options here. Most original assemblies, these items that drop in with the single lump sum, they're dropping in as subcontract, but you can come in and change the category. So I know I'm going to write a subcontract for rough carpentry. I want to go ahead and make all of these subcontract because I'm going to write a single subcontract. That's how I want to budget the money. If I was going to write a PO, you can see down here, this plumbing, we're going to write a PO for these items, and then we're going to have a separate line for labor, right? I would want materials if I'm going to write a purchase order. I would want subcontract if I'm going to write a subcontract. And then labor could be either self-performed, or you might have a labor PO that you write that falls under that category. But it is something to pay attention to, because if, for example, I put these under materials and labor, and then later I go ahead and write a subcontract for plumbing, I'm going to get a mismatch in my budget because my budget breaks items down by cost code and cost category. So it's going to be saying you budgeted, $4,100 for plumbing, and the majority of that being under labor, right? You got $3,000 under labor, but if I write a subcontract for labor, I'm going to get a line item in my budget for plumbing subcontract. And it will be a mismatch because I will have budgeted $0 for plumbing subcontract, but I will have budgeted $3,000 for plumbing labor. And that can get a little confusing. It can be corrected, but it's something to be aware of as you're building your estimate. How am I going to be committing these costs? I want to make sure I choose the appropriate category. Now, I know that's a lot in terms of adding our direct costs. Before we talk about markups and fees, Jess, do we have any questions in our Q&A that we need to take a look at?
No, we're good.
Okay, perfect. Then we'll keep on rolling. Once I've got my direct costs in here, the next thing I want to pay attention to is indirect costs. This indirect costs and allocation rates is something that you used to be able to only alter from the configuration menu. It's the ability for you to put a percentage-based overhead cost rate, if you will, on each of these cost categories: labor, materials, subcontract, equipment, and other. And we can set those up in configuration. You can see I've got 10%, 7%, 0, 7.5, and 20. We can set a default, or your administrators can set a default in the configuration menu that will apply to every single project. However, you can also come to project preferences and update these indirect cost allocation rates. This is a really nice update that they've made in the past 6 months or so that's allowing you to change it on a project by project basis. It used to be changeable only on a company-wide basis. So you can come in here and say, actually, we're going to charge 5% for labor, 3% for subcontract, right? You can choose whatever you need, and it's going to save and update your estimate. And we can always update those as needed. And if we change our defaults in configuration, that will apply to all new projects. It's not going to apply retroactively to projects that are in request because we don't want to mess with your existing estimates just because you made an update to the company default, right? So those rates can be applied. We also have the ability to apply what we call supplemental markups. Supplemental markups are other percentage-based markups, not overhead or indirect costs, but percentage-based fees that we may charge. So if I say add supplemental markup here, the same as adding cost codes, in my training database, I have a large list of supplemental markups. You may not see anything here because your company may not have built any supplemental markups, and that's okay. Those are built in the configuration menu under the supplemental markups line. The best way that I can explain what should or shouldn't be used as a supplemental markup is to say if you calculate that fee or that markup as a percentage of other costs within the estimate, then supplemental markups is a good place to do that. And what I mean by that is your options are things like percent of direct labor, percent of direct subcontract, percent of direct materials, percent of direct total costs, or you can even do percent of direct and indirect costs, which would be this number right here. And then you've also got a percent of total price option. All of those are different units of measure you can use for supplemental markups. And when you come in here, you can see some of our examples: payment and performance bond, general liability insurance. We don't want to see sales tax in here. I know you see that on our training database. It's really not intended for taxes. It's intended for other percentage-based fees, something like a technology fee, right? If you want your customers to be helping cover the cost of your RedTeam Flex subscription, great. You can put that in as a supplemental markup. And when we apply those, see if I have any. Yeah, I think I've already got a bunch applied in here. When we apply those, we will see the percentage and the dollar value, and we can come in and remove any of those if we want. So I'm going to remove a whole bunch of these because we certainly don't need all of them. You can set up defaults. So the reason I have so many already in here is I've set up some defaults for this customer facility. We'll try and kind of pare this down for you, right? You certainly probably wouldn't have this many, but you can see the percentages, right? My payment and performance bond is a percent of the total price of the project, where my labor overhead is just a percent of direct labor. We have different options in there: permit allowances, percent of total price. Add as many markups as you need, and those are built custom for your company. Once you build it in configuration, it will be a part of the list and you can use it again over and over. The last piece then is your type of proposal and your fee. So our type of proposal here is either fixed price, which is our default, construction management, which is allowing you to still bill on a progress style bill, but also include overhead rates per cost category on top of your fee. And then time and materials, which is probably our least common option. That is, we have no guaranteed maximum price. We're not going to be billing on a schedule of values and a progress style bill. We're instead going to be using time and material sheets for billing with no guaranteed maximum price. So we'll stick with fixed price here. Notice how those overhead rates disappear if I'm using fixed price. We can put in our fee as a percentage either of total cost, which is this number here in bold, or as a percentage of total price. And I'll show you the difference. Percent of total cost, this number here, our fee value, is exactly 10% of this number above it. If I say, which gives me really only a 6% profit margin, because it's not including all my supplemental markups or the fee itself in the calculation. If I flip this to percent of total price and we put in 10%, we should see, well, that zero shouldn't be what we see, but I apologize there. What it should be showing is that our fee value will be 10% exactly of this number. So we'd see 16,000 there, right over here. And that would be allowing me to include my supplemental markups and my fee in the value. And what it would be doing is giving me a true 10% profit margin. We'll go back to total cost there. And notice how my total price changes as well, depending on that calculation. Now, let's say you don't like either of those calculations. You're not getting quite the dollar value that you want for your fee. Feel free to come in here and just type in the number that you want. I want to round this off. I want it to be This is my total, or I don't want the cents in there. We've had some clients say that, hey, I don't want to charge, pennies and dimes. Let's go ahead and make it an even dollar value. You can do that. And then it's going to go ahead and backfill your fee value. So it's going to show you exactly um, what you're charging by dollar value. And the reason this is getting so weird is because I have so many supplemental markups that are a percent of total price. So they're trying to calculate themselves off of my total price value here too. But the key is to know you can put in either a percentage or a dollar value to get your fee the way that you want it to look. Again, we'll kind of pause here. Any questions on markups, price adjustments, proposal types, anything like that? Looks like we're looking good in the Q&A. So then we're going to talk about building that initial bid package. I believe I've got a slide here for you to show you what that looks like. So building a bid package. What is a bid package? A bid package is a way for me to group cost codes into a single invitation and invite bidders to bid on that group of cost codes. So it's really flexible, efficient, and my favorite part is that it's bi-directional. And what I mean by that is, you'll see in today's example, I built an estimate and I'm going to segment. However, could choose not to build packages, send my invitations, and that in and of itself would backfill and build my estimate for me as I go. I'll show you how that works. But to build a bid package, the first thing we're going to want to do is create it and name it. We can rename it at any time. We'll set up some basic bidder details. What's the due date for everyone? Any standard attachments that all my bidders should be able to see and reference? Who is sending it out from my team? Probably my project manager would be my requester. We can put in any special instructions to bidders that will show up on that bid form. Additional information we want them to know. I do want you to take note as we build it of the difference between assigning cost codes to my bid package and adding cost codes to my bid package. That terminology there is really important. I can assign cost codes that exist in the current estimate. If I started with an estimate and I'm segmenting into bid packages, which is what I'm going to do today, or we can add cost codes that are not yet in the estimate. And if we do that, that's going to push those cost codes into the estimate. So that's your bidirectionality. If I start with the bid package and add cost codes, those cost codes themselves will show up in the estimate. Then we'll add our bidders in. We have the ability to search and filter for folks who meet our needs, folks who can perform the type of work that we need. And then we can go ahead and add notes, edit things. We'll show you how anything you do within the bid package to edit those assemblies and those details will automatically update your estimate. So we're going to come back over here. We're going to hit new, and we're going to say add bid package. Now, if you don't see this option, it may be because in project preferences, you don't have the bid packages option checked. Most of our newer clients, this is turned on by default for all your new projects. But if not, in the My Company section of configuration, you can say I'd like to default all my new projects to using bid packages. And then you can go into any of your existing projects, look at project preferences, and check the bid packages option. The reason it's optional is because we do still have some clients that have been with us a long time that prefer our older legacy RFQ or request for quote process. We're not forcing folks to sunset that yet, but of course we highly recommend the new bid package feature. Much more flexible, much more easy to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and build a bid package. And it's going to toggle me immediately to the bid package screen. I'm still on the estimate step, and I can toggle back to my estimate anytime I want. You can also see my other bid packages in here. I've already built one for carpentry. So this is my brand new one. Again, if it's blue, you can click to edit. So come in here, and we said this one was going to be carpentry, I think. Wait, what have we already got? We've got carpentry. So let's make this one masonry. Masonry services. We can come in here and set our due date. If you hit this more icon, these three dots, you're going to see these three dots all over the bid package page. It's always offering you an opportunity to add in some more information. So click in here. This is the due date for all bidders. It's automatically setting 1 month out, but I can go ahead and we can drag and drop any attachments that should go out to all bidders in this bid package. So stuff that's specific to masonry, don't feel the need to add plans and specs. We're going to do that for you automatically. They're going to have a link to view all the plans and specs for the project. Manager's name, which is instructor. See that all this information I put here is going to show on the bid form. So we fill in our basic details there. And then over here, we can hit the new icon. There's our assign and add cost codes options. So first we're going to assign the cost code of masonry that's already in my estimate. There's those few cost codes that are in my estimate. I'm going to choose masonry and add. I could choose multiple or search through if you've got a large estimate. Brings it in, and it brings in the full assembly with the quantities and unit costs that I've already estimated. We can also hit add cost codes. This is that bi-directional piece. So I pull this in and I go, you know what? Oops, I had another couple cost codes for masonry that I meant to add, but I forgot to add them on the estimate page. Now we can come in here, look at masonry, and see all the different options in there, right? We can add mortar. We can add anything else we may need. And as I add mortar and build out an assembly, we can have several line items in here. Again, we can have the mortar itself. We could have labor. We could have delivery. Whatever we're tracking there, as we make these changes, think of this as a fully functional mini estimate. These are going to show up on the main estimate. So it's a lump sum. We'll go ahead and put this all under subcontract, right? I want to write a subcontract for masonry. Let's adjust all our categories to subcontract. And then we'll go ahead and estimate some values here. This will be hours and delivery will be a lump sum, right? We'll put in some unit costs. Say 40 hours at $35 an hour. You see how it's auto calculating the totals for me, and we can put in a lump sum of $3,000 there, right? So all of this that I put in, because I said, well, oops, I need that in the bid package. I forgot to put it in the estimate. We toggle back over to the estimate. You're going to see that that mortar has been added, and any changes I make here to mortar or masonry is going to be automatically reflected in the bid package as well. We can come back into this bid package and continue editing anytime we want. Once we've got the cost codes and assemblies built out the way we want, we can then add our bidders. And by the way, you don't have to put in dollar values if you don't want to. I do have some clients who say, I want to solicit prices first. I don't want to estimate dollar values. That's fine. Let's add our bidders. We can search for our bidders however we see fit, using our search bar, type in their name. I want to type in plumbing. I'm going to see everybody with the word plumbing in their name. We've also got filters here. You can see folks you've worked with before. You can see folks who have these cost codes in their trades section of their vendor profile. Or we can expand it out and say, hey, they have any cost codes in this division in their trade section of their vendor profile. We can see how far they are from the job site. That only works if you have a job site address and there's an address entered into your vendor profile. And then qualifications. You see a long list here. Again, that's like supplemental markups. It's custom built. So if you don't see any options under qualifications, it's because your company hasn't built any custom qualifications yet. But you can build custom qualifications, such as in my case, who's qualified to work on commercial projects versus residential projects, right? We can build those qualifications in the configuration menu, and then apply them to each vendor in the vendor's profile. And that way I can say, I need someone who's within 50 miles of the job site, does masonry work on commercial projects. And very quickly, I get a short list of vendors over here that meets those needs. You can see these little parentheses are telling me I have 9 vendors who fit the residential qualification. We also have credentials as an option. So if you're collecting credentials in Flex, you can say, well, I need folks who already have a master agreement on file. I need folks who already have a W-9 on file, whatever the case may be. You can check that box and narrow your search. So we're going to go ahead and add a couple of masonry vendors: Adventure, Annex, and Fred Michelle. Right, we've got our 3 bidders here. You can add as many bidders as you want. Your bid package can be as large or small as you want. So you see, I'm doing carpentry and masonry separately. I have some clients who build a single massive bid package for the entire project. That's fine, can be done. You could add every cost code from the estimate here and 35 bidders. That is perfectly fine. More often we see this more tailored approach with several different bid packages for different scopes of work. Now, once I've got my bidders in here, I can go ahead and send out that invitation, which is going to simply be done either here, send out all unsent RFQs, or right here. We can go ahead and send their RFQ once we have all their information in. Right, so you can send individually or en masse. We've got the ability here to open quote cards. The reason I can't send it is because I don't have a contact selected, right? You may have contacts automatically selected. You've got a default there, but I can say, hey, well, I want to send this to Sarah. I'm also going to send to Ashley because I know Sarah's not great at checking her email, right? We could send to multiple or just one. In this quote card, we could also adjust due dates. If we want to adjust the due date for this one person, we can. With this one bidder, we can certainly do that, or you can come back up here and adjust for everyone. As the quote comes in, the rest of this card is going to fill itself out. But now you can see I can send that RFQ because I've got a person, a contact attached there. You can delete a bidder from here if you want to remove them. And it's definitely not a bad idea to preview your bid form before you send it out. So we can view the bid form, and that's going to fill in with project and bid package specific information. Our project, the ice cream house that we're building, any project description, address. We've got all the basic project information, and then any special instructions that we type in. Those are the ones that I typed in right up here, special instructions right there. And that's your space to add in additional information. You've got some basic stipulations here in the bid form. And then what's really valuable is as I send out that request, they get an email. I'm sending it out. They get an email to RFQ. And in that email, they can indicate, are you interested in bidding? Yes, no, or maybe. And then they can click a link to open this bid form. It's really easy for them to go ahead and see exactly what you've built out. And in fact, they're going to see those assembly narratives. So let me show you what I mean by that. If we come in here to labor, we can say labor to include setup and cleanup, right? Whatever we want to place in there for description. Now, if we reload that bid form, there's our description, labor to include setup and cleanup. So you've not only got the title of the assembly item, the title of the cost code, you've got description of work. So that narrative can be really valuable in communicating the scope of work to your bidders. And now they can come in here and checkbox the items that they are going to bid on and put in their quote values. They can also click and drag their own Excel, Word document, PDF bid form, right? Whatever quote they've created, they can drag it here. And then there's their full access to plans and specs and the online plan room. So we hope that you send this out and they fill it in themselves. We're going to look at some status tracking so that you can understand where things sit. And then we'll come back and show you how you can fill it in on their behalf if you ever need to. Over here, you've got status tracking, RFQ not sent. We can alter the status ourselves if we know some communications have happened outside of RedTeam. Right, they told me they're not going to bid when I was talking to them the other day. But it's also automatically going to change if we go ahead and say send all unsent RFQs. I can send all of these out for each bid package. Again, Fred Michelle probably just doesn't have anyone chosen in their quote card. He doesn't have any contacts on file, so I can't send that out. But it sent the ones that it can. And as we come to our vendor quotes page, we can track the status. RFQ's been sent here, and this one has not been sent. This status will update, and we can see bid package by bid package exactly where things sit. As we come back into our cost estimate and back into our bid package, again, we hope that they are doing things like clicking, hey, I will bid, or I may bid. These guys would, hey, we won't bid. We're hoping they're updating those as they receive your email. They don't even have to look at the bid form. They just get the email and they can say, nope, sorry, don't have time. And you get those answers. That way you know who to follow up with. Let's say you need to give them a call. You can open their quote cards here, and you've got phone numbers. You can open multiple quote cards and keep notes. There's your bidder notes. Hey, I talked to them on this day. They said that they're prepping it and they are still going to get their bid in. Or here's what we discussed, and they may send in potential changes to their quote. Right? Keep those notes there. You've got notes here for the overall bid package, internal, for your team to see. And then you also, under the vendor quotes page, you can see their status, and then those notes appear here. So you can pull up individual bidder notes, and you can contact them from this page as well. Now, let's talk about receiving those answers. What should happen is your bid package just starts to fill itself out as they fill in their bid forms. But if they don't, you have the opportunity to come in here and manually reflect. Let's say they just email you a copy of their quote, and they say, you know what, I can handle everything except labor. Right? You could go ahead and say, hey, these guys are going to supply everything. I'll have to source labor from somebody else. You could then put in their values here. Hey, they're going to do this for $8,000, and they're going to do this portion for $4,500. Right? So they're doing good. They're coming in under what I thought it would cost. And notice that status flipped to draft. As we start putting in numbers, it's a draft quote. And it will stay draft until such time as we say, yes, those numbers are accurate. Let's go ahead and commit it. You can always flip it back to draft if you have the right permissions to make changes. But we'll go ahead and commit that when we're finished making changes. Notice it turns gray, and I can't edit their bid anymore. Now, Annex Masonry, let's open their bid form. We'll say they filled this out themselves from their email. They opened this up and they said, yeah, I can provide everything. And here's the values. And notice they can't see what you estimated here. When I was entering it over here, I can see that the GC estimated 8,900 and 6,000. When your bidder's entering it themselves, they have no way of knowing what you think it should cost. They can come in here and say, that's going to be $6,500, and this is going to be 12. Right? We get the total down here. They could just put in the total, and it would automatically split out those values for them. They can drag and drop their file, look at the plans as needed, and that's really it. There's no submit button. They just fill it in, and the information is going to show up on your side. Notice how it's already here. It comes in as a draft so that if needed, you can reach out and discuss with them, make updates. On the quote card, you would see their file that they attached. Or again, if you receive it via email or some other way, you can drag and drop it to keep it on file here. We'll go ahead and commit this one as well. Now, if we don't need any changes, this is where we can start comparing. We can see the quote values as compared to what we estimated. And then we can compare apples to apples by looking at excluded and extra items. It's saying they left out labor. You estimated labor at $1,400. So if we added that $1,400 in, your should cost comparison means if you go with these guys and you're able to buy out labor for $1,400 from someone else, as you predicted, your total cost should be $13,900, which would be less than what you estimated. Whereas if I go with these guys, they've got everything, but they're going to be well over what I thought it should cost at $18,500, right? If they added any extra items that weren't solicited, it will go ahead and subtract those out of the quote, and you'll be able to compare apples to apples at the bottom there. Now, the last step here, which is an optional piece, is if I would like to choose someone and go ahead and fill in my estimate. Let's say, hey, you know what? Annex Masonry is higher than I thought, but it's going to be able to, they're going to be able to provide all services. I'm going to go ahead and go with them. I know they do good work for me. I can move this from committed to selected as best. And what that does is says for all these checkboxed items, this will be the bidder. That's who I'm going to contract with. It is actually going to update my estimate to include these numbers instead. So you can still see what I predicted over here, but it's gonna bring in a line item for $12,000 and $6,500. And when we go back out to our main estimate, it has replaced my estimated numbers with $6,500 for masonry and $12,000 for mortar. That's allowing me to plug those bidder numbers directly into the estimate and save myself time. Now, you don't have to use that. And the reason some folks don't want to is because they want to add a little cushion or flex room in their estimate, or they want to round the numbers off. You don't have to plug exactly what your bidder told you right into the estimate. If you don't like that, simply leave it as committed. You can leave yourself a note saying I chose Annex Masonry, and then you can build a subcontract with them, no problem. But just know that this feature here is available if you'd like to quickly tailor your estimate with exactly the numbers you received from your chosen bidders. It's also going to allow you to generate a list of selected vendors on your proposal to show everyone that you've chosen very quickly and easily. So again, that's a big chunk of information. How are we looking in the Q&A, Jess? Do we have any questions we need to answer?
We're looking good.
Okay, perfect. Then let's hop back over here to our slides. I think I went through a couple of slides at once. We looked at building our bid package and sending our request for quote, tracking statuses. The last piece then, and we covered this receiving and leveling bids. So again, you'll have this slide afterwards as a backup to kind of show you, right? Remember that select as best is optional and the key features there. But the last thing we really want to look at here is even going beyond the estimating and bid solicitation. I want to show this to you because this is a really valuable reason to use our bid solicitation tool. I know some folks can be tempted to be doing their estimating and their bid solicitation elsewhere. If you do it here in Flex, you have this added advantage of being able to very quickly convert those quotes into subcontracts and purchase orders, and it's going to pull all that information from the bid form straight into a commitment form for you. We'll show you the shortcut from the vendor quotes page, and then you simply make small adjustments to the schedule of values as needed, and you can go ahead and get that sent off really, really quickly. So let's come back here. We've chosen our bidder here for this bid package. We can come back to our estimate and see the effect that that's had on our total price, right? Make any other adjustments we need. Once we've gathered all the quotes we needed, and you can see this is the one we selected as best, fine if you just leave items in committed and then leave yourself a note saying, hey, this is the one I want. You can view those bid forms here anytime you want. Hit here to view the bid form. But if I have selected this as best, any best or committed quote here, I can hit the tools icon and add a new vendor commitment, add a new subcontract or purchase order really quickly and easily. And it's going to be asking me, what commitment form do you want to fill out? Well, I want to fill out a subcontract agreement. You probably won't have this many. You'll have a purchase order and a subcontract, or maybe a couple of both. But I'm going to go ahead and say, I want to fill this out as a subcontract. And it's going to take me to the subcontract creation form that I would normally access from the buyout tab. It's already selected the vendor for me. Notice how it skipped step 1. It actually doesn't want to let me go back until I select my tax rate. It just wants to make sure you don't leave any key fields. But if you go back to step 1, you can see it already put in annex masonry, and it's utilizing that quote automatically. Here in contract terms, it's filled in most of this information for you. You're just going to double check it. You're going to go ahead and make sure that the subject is what you want. This subject copies itself from the bid package title, so you can update that as needed. And then we can, change our contact at all if we need to, based on who we should be sending the subcontract to. That might not be the same person that we were soliciting the quote from. We want to make sure we fill in our payment terms and tax rates. Any retainage, your bill to should already be in there. And then you can choose whether or not you want to require a lien waiver. We won't go through the full subcontract process here because I know that's beyond the scope of bid solicitation, but I want you to see how all these items are brought in automatically. You're seeing the cost code total, and you're also seeing the assembly line items, right? So in this case, we may want to trim this down and say, hey, I just want to see a lump sum, right? I don't want to see mortar. And actually, I think I doubled these by turning off the quote and turning it back on. So I apologize. It looks a little redundant. Let me get rid of one set of these so you'll see what it would ordinarily look like: our mortar, our labor, and our delivery. So this is what it would look like based off of the quote, the shortcut that we took. We said, turn that quote into a subcontract. Here it's showing you $65,000 for masonry and $12,000 for mortar. It is not breaking down amongst the assembly line items for me because it doesn't know how much of that $12,000 is for mortar, labor, and delivery. That's because if you remember, the bid form didn't include those details, right? The bid form just allows me to put a total and check box which items are included in that total. It's not allowing me to break that down. So if you need that on your schedule of values in your subcontract, you can certainly come in here and update. You can grab these items and split out the value by saying update. And then I can say, right, instead of 12,000, we can split that money up amongst mortar, labor, and delivery. But the way that this looks is the way it's going to show on your subcontract. And you can see it's saving me a lot of time over building these items individually. It's making sure I get the right totals and the right line items built out based on how I built my bid package. So we won't go too much further there. If you need more details on how to build subcontracts and purchase orders, of course, you can visit our help center. But that's really all we have for you today. Hopefully, you've seen the value there in the ability to build an estimate, translate quickly into flexible bid packages, send invites, compare everything that you receive, apples to apples, and then convert those chosen quotes directly into subcontracts and purchase orders. But that's all we have for today. If there's any questions in the Q&A, we can answer those. Or if you have additional questions, please feel free to drop those in the Q&A now, and we'll hang around for a couple minutes. But thanks so much for joining us, everybody.